I would just like to open the meeting with our committee prayer. Thank you. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a team and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that will affect the ratepayers, all our citizens, staff and stakeholders of our district. And continue to remind us that all we do here today, all that we accomplish is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater benefit of our people and the Taurua district. We ask for these things in your name. Amen. So welcome to our visitors, to Linda and your supporters, part of your team. Thank you for you're very welcome here to our meeting. Apologies first. I would just like to move, we accept apology for Councillor Mike Long. Seconded, Erina. All in favour? Thank you. So first up, Linda, have you, you're welcome. You'd like to, or one of you or yourself, one of your team would like to address us today? Yeah, I'll just take a seat and we'll be in your hands for 4 or 5 minutes. That's right, for 5 minutes or so.
Yep, wonderful. Okay, thank you for it's okay, better standing. Thank you for the opportunity for 5 minutes. I'll try and keep it to that. It might be 6. That's all right. I should do my best. So I just want to say good afternoon, everybody. And just to say to you that I have a request. I have some responses. I have some questions and an invitation. So our request is that this council please respond to the email that I sent on behalf of Fluoride Free Tararua on Monday, 11th of March, regarding an extension, excuse me, I just need to slow down a little bit, regarding an extension of the fluoridation project to the 31st of December. Now, my response to the recent comments made in this chamber, and please note that I'm not being critical of any particular person. I'm addressing that you as the council. To the recent comments made in this chamber referring to our group as a squeaky wheel and the anti-fluoride brigade. I would just say that when you notice someone about to quietly slip a drug into your glass, most people would have something to say about that. You may consider us loud, but we're not going away, and we may have to get a whole lot louder. We are not anti-fluoride. Thank you to Mike Long for speaking up on our behalf. We are pro-health and pro-freedom of choice regarding medication. We care about the health of the people of Dannevirke. We have no problem with anyone who wishes to swallow fluoride. We choose not to. We also wish to express our disapproval of the highly offensive and inappropriate comments made in this chamber referring to children with lowered IQ as idiots. As this council may be aware, idiot was formerly a technical term in legal and psychiatric contexts for some kinds of profound intellectual disability where the mental age would be 2 years or less, and the person cannot guard themselves against common physical dangers. The term was gradually replaced by profound mental retardation, which has since been replaced by other terms. The term idiot is considered archaic and offensive. Studies show, and this is fact, not belief, that fluoride, like lead, can lower the IQ of babies where pregnant mothers swallow fluoride or when formula-fed infants are bottle-fed with fluoridated water. As Mike Long pointed out, the percentage of fluoride in the water is increased when the water is boiled.
So, an idiot in modern use, as we all know, is a stupid or foolish person.
To refer to fluoride damaged children in this way is completely reprehensible, and we expect better from council. My questions, and there are 6 of them, and I'll try to go through it as quickly as I can. And the first one is, if you had not received a directive from the Director General of Health, would you have made any movement toward the fluoridation of our water supply? And I'd like you to think on that question. I don't expect you to answer me here and now, but an answer at some point would be appreciated. Now, we have heard, and this is question number 2, we have heard this council state numerous times that you have no say in this matter, that your hands are tied, that you must obey the directive of the DGH. Question, are you aware that you actually do now have a clear choice to delay the implementation of a fluoride plant in Dannevirke to December the 31st? By which time there will hopefully be more clarity on your position, which currently places you in serious conflict between your legal obligations to the people of Dannevirke and an unlawful government directive. I don't envy you. There will also hopefully be the release of the court findings in the USA case, which is likely to see the fluoridation of water banned in that country. Question 3. Are you aware that New Zealand is one of only 8 countries in the world that currently add fluoride to drinking water? Question number 4. What is the projected ongoing cost to the Taurua ratepayers for the fluoridation of the Dannevirke water supply? Question number 5. I personally know people in this community who already suffer from kidney disease or thyroid malfunction. They are very likely to become extremely unwell if forced to swallow fluoride. The question is, what plans do you have to protect these residents from being poisoned by fluoride? And one final question. If we are able to begin a Child Smile project in Dannevirke, similar to what they have in place in Scotland, where they do not fluoridate the water, this involves the ongoing and continuous education of our primary school children, where they're not only given toothbrush and toothpaste, but they're taught at school how to use them properly, and then they're supervised to properly clean their teeth every school day after lunch. Would you be prepared to assist and support us with such a project? Would love an answer to that question. And I do realise that it's probably better directed to and answered by the Wellbeing Committee, but as most of those committee members are present, I thought it would be timely to ask it here. And also, today is World Oral Health Day, so I thought I'll just put that question to you. I will email this to everybody. And finally, we have an invitation. We're organising a second public meeting on the subject of fluoride, and we will be inviting council to send along a speaker to present the council point of view on fluoride. We would allow that person 5 to 10 minutes to present the pro-fluoride argument. Even though that argument, the safe and effective belief, has been the very public and official fluoride message for as long as I can remember. I just turned 72, so that's quite a while I can remember that message. We will still allow both sides of the argument to be publicly expressed and heard. Council will receive this invitation from us as soon as we finalise the details. We will need an RSVP to enable us to include your speaker in our advertising. Thank you for listening.
Thank Thank you very much, Linda. If I just briefly respond to perhaps backwards, but from backwards first. If you'd like to email myself a copy of those questions, and I'll make sure from this committee we get you some answers. We may need the Wellbeing Committee to have an input, and perhaps our General Manager from Structure, Hamish, and we'll get the right people to respond to those for you. We appreciate the extensions and things we're aware of. We've been keeping a close eye ourselves on the Nelson extension, and the Director General just recently did indicate she was going to contact all 14 councils or give some further consideration to the directive. So no doubt we'll be interested to see what comes out of that as well. So there's a few things in the pot at the moment, and there's been appeals both ways from the Crown backwards and also the group that appealed. So there's that right in the pot at the moment. So it's a moving feast really. But we'll get back to you for that. We'll look forward to your invitation, and we will consider it together with the Mayor and the C who would like to attend. So we do appreciate you coming here and talking to us. Just on the other matters you're a little bit unhappy with about, the squeaky wheel and the idiot thing. I can't recall that discussion personally, Linda. If it was made, it's possibly might have been made in an unfortunate context, but I can't recall myself or anyone in this committee calling you squeaky wheel. So if it did happen, a bit sorry. And the idiot comment, I haven't much comment, but if you're a bit offended with those from anywhere in here, my apologies for that. So yeah, so otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and you're always welcome in here. And if we can attend to your meeting and stand in front of you, we can turn roles around, that would be good. So thanks very much for your time and your members or helpers or supporters. So, but very welcome to stay on to the rest of the meeting if you like. Okay then, thanks very much. Councillors, just for thank you for the public forum. We'll just go on to notifications of matters not on the agenda. Nothing major, but I was going to just perhaps later in the meeting, I just mentioned Mayor Tracy and myself and Hamish and Andrew just met landowners at McGibbon Bridge yesterday morning. So we might, Tracy or myself or Hamish might just give you a bit of an update on that. We had the two matters. We had Waimiti Road, which we sorted out last year reasonably successfully. Not sure about McGibbon Bridge, but we'll bring you up to speed where we are with that. So, any declarations of interest? Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kerry. In the context of the management report and one of the items that's discussed in there around Akatio water supply, I'll declare my conflict of interest as a house owner at that community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Councillor Sharon. The councillors would, if we get a move in a second to receive the minutes that will be circulated. Councillor Scott and Steve, all in favour? Aye. Okay. Right, so we'll go through the minutes, page 3 of my agenda, page 4, page 5, page 6. Nothing that's not going to be dealt with later, so no matters arising, councillors. We'll declare those. They'll be received. Is that okay? Received and move. We received. Motion. Okay, let's go on. So, councillors, next item on the agenda is a presentation from Waka Kotahi. So, very welcome to Manuka and Jonathan from Waka Kotahi. We do have a presentation that will go onto our TV screen. So, thanks, gentlemen, for taking the time. It's always good to hear a bit about what's happening on the southern eastern side.
Yeah.
We've just run out of petrol there, but it could wait a minute. Change seats.
It's an easy one.
So once again, thank you for coming. You can put your hands, and either yourself or Jonathan, just press those buttons till they glow red, and then you're away.
Kia ora. Thank you, Chair, councillors, staff, for us today. I'm the acting manager for system design for NZTA.
Got it. I am the communications and engagement, Jonathan Houseman. I'm the communications and engagement manager for a number of Whakapōtahi projects. Most of you I know through the Te Aho Tūranga involvement, but also Manawatu Gorge.
Thanks. Gentlemen.
Cool. What we are here to do today is to just provide you a bit of an update on our work with the Manawatu Gorge, or the future of the Manawatu Gorge. Our understanding, we are relatively new to this project, but our understanding is that you may have had some touch points with ourselves quite some time ago at the start of the process. And we're here just to, I guess, provide an update as to where we've got to since then, and give you a bit of insight into next steps. So there's a bit of awareness as to what we'll be doing over the next 6 to 12 months. Next slide, please. Control. That was press all the buttons.
I thought Higgins would have cleared that slip by now.
Just this one. Effectively over the last couple of years now, we started with effectively a geotech assessment to figure out effectively what was going on in the gorge, and what was the status of some of the slips and the assets that we had in that gorge. And that fed into a business case process, effectively an objective view of all the different options that we could progress with within the gorge, and then figuring out effectively what is feasible, what is fundable, what is appropriate, based on a number of inputs, including those from council officers on both sides of the gorge. And then that's led into a management plan in terms of how we actually go and deliver what was out of that business case. So the geotech assessment is complete, and I understand will be shared publicly relatively soon. I think some of your officers may have had that already. The business case and the management plan is in final draft. We're effectively working through that process, bringing all the councils on board and the relevant interested organisations on board to work with us as we progress through to complete that project. The key outcomes as part of those 3 bits of work is that we've confirmed that effectively no surprises that the gorge is unsafe for vehicles, and increasingly unsafe for access for the likes of pedestrians and cyclists and other modes of transportation through that area. That increasingly unsafe access is key because that effectively means that because of the assets that are in there and the inability for us to actually get into the gorge to remedy those problem areas, that we're unable to maintain them safely. Effectively, we can't get contractors in there safely, and it's a cost prohibitive process to do so. And so effectively with the management plan, we're looking to stop that road. So effectively it's a legal process in terms of removing the legal definition of what that road is and how that road functions through that corridor. This is a process that we will undertake with stakeholders, with iwi and with the council partners and community. There are then, outside of the gorge immediately, there are 2 sections that we are likely to seek to revoke. And I'll go through those in the next couple of slides. This is effectively what we're talking about. So the gorge itself will be stopped as a road, and there'll be some ongoing monitoring for NZTA to investigate and then implement to make sure that we're aware of what happens in that gorge. And then 2 sections of road that will be revoked for RCA, so that Palmerston City Council and yourselves. I won't go through the full legal definition here, but effectively the road stopping through that gorge is where we then, it's a process that we have to work through under the Public Works Act, and it means that legally we cannot consider that a road moving forward. In terms of revocation, this is the legal definition, but ultimately we would be seeking to transfer ownership, control and funding responsibility of the road to a future RCA. Or in the case of this, there's obviously 2 RCAs, and the key thing with revocation is based on our policy, which defines how we do this process. We must consider the revocation decision within the context of the surrounding road network, and that the revoked roads transport function is fit for purpose at the time of handover. So effectively, we would undertake a bunch of work to make sure that that asset is in an appropriate condition, and that appropriate condition is something that we would be working through with your council officers over the next few months, and ultimately come to this chamber at a future date once we get through that process. This is an indigo. This is not as relevant to this committee, but effectively this is a summary of what we'll be doing at the Ashurst end for Palmerston City Council. There are a few assets that will be improving and a few that effectively remove. Closer to this side of the gorge, this is effectively a risk map, and without getting into too much detail, those dark purple sections of the road are considered highest risk, and the key thing to note is that the risk increases over time. So while you see quite a lot of blue further down, those will start to become more purple over time, and that just highlights the I guess our inability to get contractors in there to do any maintenance safely. In terms of moving forward, in terms of that revoked section, what we've done through that business case process is look at what the future of that Old State Highway 3 would look like, particularly after Te Akau Turinga opens. And we've done basically a baselining exercise in terms of what future form and function and that fit for purpose consideration looks like. So we're working in between two bounds, effectively, what is basically a minimum fit for purpose and what is effectively a target fit for purpose. And these are sort of the conversations we'll be having with your council officers over the next few months to get to that right balance of achieving something that is appropriate fit for purpose and then long-term maintainable for the type of use that it'll see. Some of these will be defined for us by, I guess, government direction. So currently the GPS, government policy statement on land transport's out for consultation, and some of that then feeds down into funding individual projects will define what we are able to do through those. And one thing we should note as part of the revoked section on this side of the gorge is that there is that heritage listed bridge. This is a asset that we would seek to work with your officers in great detail on in terms of what needs to be done prior to revocation. It may be that there's a different arrangement for the bridge versus the road, because we understand that it's a significant asset, but also has limited transport function. So there might be custom FAR funding assistance rate or some kind of bespoke arrangement for that. So at this stage, we haven't had that conversation with council officers, and it's something that we'll start to have over the next few months. There is no predetermined outcome in this case. In summary, the work that we've done so far basically recommends that the Ashurst end and the Woodville end of the old State Highway 3 corridor will be revoked, and that the gorge section inside the gorge will be stopped. There's a whole bunch of ongoing work associated with all of those. Happy to take any questions.
Your councillors, the floor's open to yourselves. Councillor Peter.
Gary, going back 2 or 3 slides, there was a comment about NZTA restoring the road to its previous condition prior to revocation. Is that right?
In terms of the revoked section, we would basically work with your council officers to determine at what point do we hand that asset back over. I would say that when we consider the purpose of that road was to carry a high number of regional freight movements, heavy trucks. That is obviously not the case now. We wouldn't see it carrying anywhere near that level of demand because of the new highway. So we would work with your council officers to determine what is an appropriate standard for that asset that then can be sustainably maintained by the council moving forward.
You intend re-erecting the fence at the Woodville end of the gorge, I take it. Is that right or not? You intend to re-erect the fence that was put up but then partially taken down to allow walkers and cyclists to go through. With the full knowledge of what occurred.
I'm not sure that we've taken that fence down, but I think to again work with the council officers to fix the area and safe distance.
I can continue. Probably aware that the Old Gorge Road is frequently used for walking and cycling right through, and the intention of many, including Palmerston North City Council and indeed this council, without discussion, want to see it available for use for leisure activity, including possibly horses even. That's of no concern of yours, though, is it?
It was something that was a key principle as part of that business case process at the start. We explored all opportunities and options to be able to get to that standard through the corridor. Ultimately, what we've determined through that geotech assessment and the management plan and evaluating all the risks and the I guess the financial commitment required to get it to even just a safe corridor to get through is somewhat cost prohibitive. And so what we'll be doing through the process, and it's something that I actually hadn't put in the slides, is that once we recommend road stopping, that is a decision that sits with LINZ, Land Information New Zealand, in terms of what the future of that looks like. I guess our role as a transport agency is just in transport function, and we have done that through the highway. And ultimately, it will be up to LINZ to determine how the future of that corridor, of that land is, what the options for that are. I guess that is not effectively a responsibility for us as the transport agency.
Has been revoked by NZTA. and you've had your discussion with Linz, and Linz decides to hand it to Doc, for example, comes like the track up Mount Cook, for instance, walkers beware. Avalanche or a rockfall, it's entirely up to the individual concerned. It would fall into that category, I take it.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be in the domain of DOC and their interests. We have continued to maintain comms with DOC all the way through, especially as part of the new Highway project. And ultimately, that'll be a decision for Linz to have that comms with DOC or any relevant government agency or partner.
So just a quick addition to that.
We have had quite a bit of feedback from the recreational groups around what you've just suggested, and that what is within that area is no more hazardous than what someone might encounter when they're going for a tramp up Mount Cook. And that's definitely something that will be considered through that Linz process. One thing that you consider around Linz is they will be doing consultation with all interested parties, including councils, DOC, other central government agencies with a vested interest in that area. So all of these conversations will be able to come out and those perspectives will be discussed. One thing from our perspective, which comes out in the geotech, is there is certain parts of that area have an acceptable level of risk for people who are walking, cycling. However, they have a not acceptable level of risk for people that are stationary. So therein lies our issue around things like crews will tend to be stationary for a fair amount of time. We can't, from a health and safety perspective, have them.
Just a question, Jonathan or Paduka. So once the minister approves the road stoppage, it passed over to Linz to takes over the process from there.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, once NZTA there's no transport function for that asset. Yeah.
And I just noticed on the maps, Vanuka, that it's commented about one-off cost to stop the road and then ongoing monitoring. Is there ongoing monitoring up until it's stopped officially, or will you continue to monitor it while groups and the councils interact with each other?
I wouldn't be able to answer that definitively. However, we would ensure that effectively, if there is another agency that takes on that monitoring, that there wouldn't be effectively a downtime. So we are having conversations, or will be having conversations with the likes of URL, DOC, and all those agencies in terms of that monitoring.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kerry. If from past experience, what was that time frame on roads like this? You've had roads like this somewhere else in the country. So from what period of
In terms of the process for revocation,
after Linz has got it?
that would
Monitoring, so it could go west. We're left with a pup.
that would be a Linz process. I wouldn't be able to definitively answer that one.
Yes.
Councillor Pearson.
Did you consider stopping road on the Woodville side of the bridge?
I believe so. That is, I can follow up and look through and question the team on that one. But I believe all options were considered as part of that business case process.
Yes, the reason I ask is, do you think that the Taurua District Council would be hugely interested in taking on the responsibility of maintaining a bridge that they can't use?
Yeah, understood and noted. And this is something that we need to have a conversation with your officers, and we are having a conversation with the officers about. There is the need to retain that corridor for a number of access points, and potentially there's further conversations to be had with DOC and I believe some sort of monitoring site for the gorge at the end of that bridge. But there will absolutely be further conversations about where we draw the line effectively and to what standard we asset over.
Tracy, you any questions regarding this? It's been a bit of a conversation around the table on and off over the last 12 months or so.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. I just looked with interest, and especially understanding Lee's connection with Barney's Point, and just evaluating what that means very closely. Yeah. The conversation with officers, but probably.
To be relatively happy the process is underway, and we'll just no doubt we'll have a lot of interaction with you going forward, gentlemen. So if no further questions, thanks very much for the presentation. It's great to know where we are and what's happening, and we'll keep an eye on that bridge, of course, won't we? Thanks very much. Very well, welcome to stay on, but thanks for your time and the travel. Appreciate it. Right, councillors and team, we'll move on to the reports part of the agenda, and first up is infrastructure management report. Hamish, so in your hands.
Thank you, Chair Kerry, and good afternoon, everybody. In the spirit of saving a bit of time for what's coming later on this afternoon, I thought I'd take the report as read. In general terms, we do have the right people in the room if you have any questions, and happy to go into any further detail if required.
Well, I might flick through the. We'll just start. Councillor Sheriff, all your hands.
It's further on in the report, Chair Kerry. Did you want to go page by page or?
We'll flip page by page and then stop us as we go, shall we? So, executive summary. And next page, which was page 10 for me. Transport and overview. We're going to page. Oh, sorry. Here, Councillor.
Kerry. We've had some really good feedback about the roundabouts, and it's the communication's been a lot better now that Alliance have got a communications officer. Just wondering, I remember when the planning quite a while ago when Chris was here about the roundabouts, it was quite a complex area with the railway there, and there was quite a few pipes going through that area. I didn't see a lot of digging pipes. Was pipes done at the same time?
Welcome, Dan, this afternoon.
Good afternoon. So in regards to the Three Waters network, it was basically the short answer was no, the Three Waters network wasn't replaced as part of the upgrade to the roundabouts. However, the major concern that we had was with the Queen Street roundabout. There was basically a stormwater pipe that ran directly under the road, across the road, which was literally under the seal, and that was where our major concern was, and that's where a lot of the failure was. That pipe was replaced when the work was done there. However, the Three Waters network was not, just in regards to budgets not aligning. So we did take a bit of risk with that, but we put controls in place around the designing of the actual pavement work that we did itself to make sure that we minimised any concerns to damaging the Three Waters network as the construction work was taking place. For example, a higher spec asphalt was used so that we didn't have to go as deep, which obviously put us closer to the pipes with that risk of damaging them and things like that. So.
Thanks for that. That's good to get that update. But there wasn't any like aging pipes that needed to be replaced area. So
the pipes are in old condition through there. But I believe we haven't had any grave concern or concerns around that network. However, I'm not too familiar with the Three Waters plan going forward. Yeah, Hamish, I'm sure you've got anything.
Just to add to that, so there's a large proportion of that water network is very old throughout the district. So then certainly in Dannyburg, if we were to, every time we did a roading project, replace the pipes, we wouldn't be able to do any other work. So there was a risk was taken. The only risk factor there was the age of the pipes. There wasn't a history of ongoing leaks there or any sort of other major risks or anything. So that risk was dealt with through the use of their treatment, where they tried to keep fairly shallow to try and mitigate that.
Perhaps just while you're on that, Hamish, there was some talk, a little bit of talk amongst us as northern councils about a bit of leakage there following the asphalting, Hamish. I don't know whether that came to anything, but there was some discussion. I think we might have even brought it up here at one stage, did we, Dan? I think.
I don't believe it was brought up here, but it was a concern around it. However, we've been keeping a close eye on monitoring it, and we haven't seen any further potential leaking through there. So, honestly.
This is just an observation from a lady with a pram, but it's happened to be me. But on Queen Street, you can't get across because you've got that design. Well, I know you've got a railway crossing, a great crossing and speed bumps at South School. But you know how you go along and you've got a little bit about that big, but then you've got another bit in the middle of it where one would think you could push your pram through there. So if you're driving a pram, you've got to go right around it. But is that just standard design?
Sorry, are you referring to the Queen Street roundabout with the speed humps?
No, the actual island itself. So as you come up to it, there's a little gap where one would think that where you'd push your pram, but there's a device there. So what one does now is go right down and go round, but your guttering is designed to go through where the device is. It's just an observation, and I've been getting it in the neck. So if I don't ask, I don't know. I can't give them an answer to the question.
I think we can probably go away and come back with a more specific answer. But I think in general terms, moving pedestrians away from crossing at roundabouts is generally a good idea, because the further away from those complex environments, the better for pedestrians. But I'll let Dan come back to us with some more specifics, if that's all right.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dan. So we'll carry on to page 11, transport budget categories, and the graph there. Shall we anything on page number 11 of mine? Right. Page 12. Page 13. Councillor Scott and then Peter, thanks.
You go.
Councillor Scott.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Just having a look at 4.1.2, which is the Woodville water supply. Just noting in there that we are expecting a directive from the. I suppose my first question is that standard practice that we would be expecting to receive a directive after a boil notice, or is there more maybe?
My understanding is that it is because this is the second time that an animal was found in the reservoir. So as a consequence, Te Mata Arawai have decided the best, or the approach they're going to take is to issue a directive to council as to specific actions that need to be taken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. For that, when will we be expecting to receive that directive? So I'm grateful to see that'll come through as part of a. But when will we be expecting to receive that directive from ROI?
I had expected to see it already, but I followed that up today because I anticipated this question would come up. The response I've got is that a recommendation is made. So they did an investigation, a number of staff were interviewed, and then a report is issued with recommendations, and that has to go to a panel of staff within Te Mata Arawai, and that can be quite a lengthy process. So I've asked Barbara just to follow up as to when we might expect that, but my understanding is the directive has been drafted, but it now has to go through that panel before it will actually be issued to council.
Councillor Peter, then Mayor Tracy. Mayor Tracy.
Thanks, Chair Kerry, and I'd be keen to understand that likewise when it comes in. But I guess I read with interest that we're looking at a rodent trapping contract is being prepared before we get that directive to understand it. But what does that look like, given the reservoir sits in the middle of a farm, but actually there's no trees or anything around, you know, what that rodent trapping program will look like and what the farmer might be doing on their own land. But there's very few trees around that. So just is that, I guess, rats and mice, does that program perhaps look like that without receiving the to do so?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Tracy. My understanding is that we are going to be directed to implement some sort of rodent control process. And so what we've done is we've set up an agreement with a rodent control company, and they're actually going to check all the, I'd have to confirm this, but my understanding is just the water supply. So they're actually going to do a monthly check or put bait stations or something at all the water supply locations, and they will check those monthly so that we ensure that this sort of incident doesn't happen again. The other advice we've received is that we are going to need to have some sort of rodent control management within our water safety plans. So currently they don't have any rodent control, but that will now be an expectation from Te Mata Arawai.
So this will be implemented at Woodville, but actually will flow to all of the other treatment sites. And do you think Te Mata Arawai and other people?
I can't comment on that. I don't know. But the impression I was given is that it was a gap in our water safety plan. So I'll ask that question and check. But that's the impression I was given, is that that's now the standard, I suppose, that Te Mata Arawai are expecting across the country. But I'll confirm that.
Councillor Peter, sorry.
Kerry. Roger, at the end of the reservoir facing Woodville, on the gable end there was what appears to have been an old window that has had no glass or anything in it for a long time. Presumably that's where possums got in. Has gauze or something been nailed over that to stop any future entrance of possums or birds or anything?
We've had a builder on site to do an inspection of both reservoirs to ensure that there's no longer any openings where rodents could access the reservoirs. My recollection is that there is some mesh over that window, but I would need to confirm that. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Roger, for that. That's great. So no doubt we'll wait with interest to see what we get told to do. Okay. Oh, sorry, Sharon.
No, you're moving on.
Back one. No, moving on.
No, moving on.
Good Scott, right.
On Friday.
Page 14. Councillor Sharon.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Pleased to see with item 4.1.3 to Roger and the team, first step to clarifying who's who in the zoo when it comes to the rural water supply society. So I'll look forward to seeing how that lands. 4.1.4, there's a reference there to a meeting which between the Ratepayers Association and the Three Waters staff. Very positive meeting, I have to say. It was great to get the people in the room that that know what's happening at one end, and we were able to demonstrate with the technology that at this end, we are keeping an eye on what is happening at Akatio. So there was some discussion around some short-term solutions, wasn't there, Roger? And then reflection on long-term, how we might support maintenance of a sustainable water supply at Akatio. But I just wish to acknowledge through you, Chair Kerry, through to Roger, thanks very much for getting those guys around the table, because I think that'll go a long way to addressing some of the concerns. And it's also provided me with a much better context when we come to think long term about where the investment is made. So many thanks, Roger, for arranging.
Thanks, Sharon. Tracy?
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Just if I could request through the team for the Chair Kerry and myself to have a look around that system to understand, because I also go out to those Akatio ratepayer meetings at the end of the year, and I would like that site visit. So if councillors are keen on that, just to fully understand that and the commitments that have been made.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, sorry, were you replying?
If I can just add to that, so we have committed to replace the pipeline from the treatment plant through to the top 2 tanks. That pipeline is not the required grade of material that should have been used. And we had another leak this week. And so we're struggling. Well, the tanks are well down at the moment. So there's definitely a deficiency with that particular line. And we've committed to replace that. So that's probably the most significant step that we'll take in the short term. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Kerry. Chair Kerry. Sorry, Your Worship. Yeah, I was further along those lines about that meeting that Sharon and you guys have had, because going forward, I've actually got it marked up on my notes here, because Christmas does come every year, and obviously the population out there grows. So is there mandatory things in place like checks that there was talk about everyone being educated and also having their requirement by our bylaws?
Yes, we're going to send a letter out to all the residents at Akatio and remind them of what their requirements are under the bylaw. And we will continue to, we'll do a check in November of the whole system prior to Christmas. But I suppose the key challenge is investment on this particular plant when there's only one period of the year where it comes under real strain, and that's that Christmas period. So it's that balancing of cost versus benefit, I suppose, to the community that we're trying to manage carefully.
Supplementary to that, yeah, that's what I just want to be. I don't want to be seen, you know, for ratepayers in the district subsidising somebody's holiday batch. You know what I mean? And that's the perception, right? I'm not saying they're doing it, but if it can be seen that everyone's playing their part in the game, you know, I think that goes well. Because can anyone in this room tell me how many people are compliant now out there? So if you can't tell me, that scares me.
I am.
No, but that's not the question. You see what I mean? And we won't think about this until we're paying for water tankers to go out there and fill up their water, even with a broken pipe. If the volume's X and you take Y, you'll never get to Z. So just a thought.
I think, Councillor C, I think, Roger, wasn't there? There was some discussion about doing a little bit of an audit on tanks out there at one stage, and whether Peter Greatbatch and the committee or the group, perhaps Sharon, that was going to come back to.
Well, I think that the value in the meeting, and I mean, Roger could give you a much thorough report than I could, because it was all operational. So I just sat back and let them. But I do appreciate one of the challenges that we in council have is that the bylaw states that those houses out there should have their own tank. Now we know there are houses that haven't, and the ability when Roger and his team replaces the pipe work, they're also going to be putting flow meters on to understand where the water is going, because that's been a missing link as well. So as part of the overall, where do we go from here? There is an element of, we want you to comply. The Ratepayers Association's more than happy to help us with this. They want this to be resolved, and a number of them are concerned that people haven't played the game either, Councillor Wallace. So I think over this period prior to Christmas, there will be quite a bit more communication about the council's going to do this. You'll see them up there changing the pipes, but those of you who don't have tanks, when you should have had tanks, you've got to start talking turkey.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Chair Kerry. Yeah, so the intent is to issue a letter to all the ratepayers and then perhaps give them until September. I've got to work with James Single in terms of the details. Give them until, say, September to rectify the situation, then do an inspection and make that very clear to them. But we're also proposing to do it in Pongaroa and Northwood as well. So rather than just stopping at Akatea, let's do all those areas that are subject to the bylaw, do it all at once, and we'll see what comes out of that. And then we can update council in due course. But I think the key is the check, because I understand this has been done before, but then nothing's been followed up. So the key is that we will need to get some of James's team out there to actually go and knock on doors and confirm that the bylaw has been met or not.
Through you, Kerry. So those records have disappeared into hyperspace.
Doesn't have to be.
No. Excuse me. I'm just saying, you said it's been done. Is there any records around? Because at all?
My understanding, what's been done is that people have been advised or notified that they have to have a tank, for example.
I'm looking at Peter.
So just Pongaroa with the survey.
Yeah.
Just one.
I think we're moving in the right direction here, aren't we? Actually, so that sounds good, Roger. The process is underway, so that's great. Okay, page 14 we'll finish with. Page 15, councillors. Consents, compliance. We have talked about quite a bit of this of recent, so we'll just skip across these. We won't be skipping, but page 16. Page 17. And that's the management report. Thanks very much, Hamish, for that. So we'll move on to Lachlan Gabriel. Rating recovery, which, sorry, as we were. So we'll get a move in a second. Councillor Steve, Mayor Tracy, all in favour? Against, carried. Thank you. Just going a bit quick here, Ali. Right, 8.2, Andrew and Mark. Welcome here today. In your hands.
Thank you, Chair Kerry. I'd like to take the report as read and just highlight a few points through this. The major part for us at the moment is heading towards the end of the financial year and obviously tracking on our spending to date. And that's one of the things we're currently trying to move along as much as possible. And there's our calculations done in there in regard to some of the impacts on that, depending on how well we go between now and the end of the year. As part of the conversations we were having in the recovery team just today, obviously looking at the weather between now and the end of the year, there is some predicted dry period, which obviously for some of our farmers may be a disbenefit, but obviously for us, the drier it is between now and June, the better it is for us to continue on with as much of the works as possible. For any of the actual physical works, I'll hand across to Andrew to fill us in.
Yep. So we've had a relatively productive month in terms of getting designs out to our supply panel, subcontractor supply panel. We've had a number of significant projects move through an RFQ process. One in particular is the Weber Road retreat at the 16K mark. That's just literally been awarded this morning with the local contractor HES securing that one.
They were both the most competitive price, but also the highest performance in terms of their capability as well, which was good. We are ongoing encouragement to the supply panel partners to work collaboratively together to avoid a bit of a, I suppose, that direct internal competition for staff and resources, because we are very much aware that as the Game of Thrones things, winter is coming, and winter is when contractors basically start screaming out for work, because they basically, the work dries up given that the weather's so wet. So very conscious of the fact that we don't want the contractors to over-resource with the view that this is a short-term recovery and set up that boom bust cycle. So that's an ongoing discussion with them. Some are more hungry than others in terms of securing work, but we are trying to balance that, so we're basically creating a sustainable property contractor environment as we go through this phase. In regards to anything particular on the port, is there any questions that anyone would like to ask?
And just while you're there, Andrew, if it's not on the report or anything, but I just wondered, Trace, do you think we just get Andrew to have a quick comment on perhaps Rakaitai and Otonga? Do you think we did chat yesterday, Monday morning, Andrew? So maybe just a very quick update on both those roads for councillors, where we are with those. The stuff that you can talk about.
Sorry, Kerry, there is a piece that the recovery team's got planned, I think, for Telegraph next week. That people
Off the top of my head, I can't exactly remember what the words were in it, but essentially, yeah. We are progressing the Rakaitai and Otonga Roads projects. We had a RFP out, a request for proposal out for Rakaitai over the last couple of weeks, which is basically working to engage a design build contractor for the bridge structures. That went out to 4 contractors that we have engaged with basically since, I think, starting in March 23 now, through the various different optioneering phases. So we presented through the RFP 4 options that we'd like them to consider, and they've come back with concept designs with relatively well developed with 3D imagery and bits and pieces. They've also given us some costings associated with those designs. The range, I think last time we got the project report coming up, but the range that I had within the report was indicating up to $2 million, which I can say that it is below that $2 million. But until we go through the full design build process, we don't know exactly where this is going to land. So once you start doing detailed engineering, the cost can move up or down depending on what opportunities that arise from it. One thing I'll say is where there is a low cost option amongst the 4 that we've got, which we will be actively pursuing to make sure it's as probably the key driver for our solution, to make sure we're balanced, being fair to the broader, I suppose, recovery process and level of service that's required for the property. But yeah, and so it's very, very early stages. By the end of next week, we are hoping to have held interactions with the contractors that have submitted on it, which we'll know more as we progress through that. The view that I think it's mid next month, we're seeking to select the preferred supplier. Otonga Road.
Otonga.
Yep. So as of literally 2 hours ago, I sat down with our geotech engineer to look at the revised geotech investigations we conducted upstream of the site, with the view to try and identify a better location for placing a new structure. We're starting to throw ideas around for a suitable structure that could go in there that would be basically balance the cost versus benefit of the site. And once we develop that up a bit further, we'll be able to present a bit more information on that in terms of the whether we proceed or not.
Thanks very much, Andrew. And Mark, any questions, councillors, regarding this? Wonderful. Much appreciated. We'll move on to 8.3. Cyclone recovery. Oh, we've got to have a move in a second, but we receive that. That's Aaron and Mike. All in favour? Aye. Against, carried. Thanks, councillors. Welcome, Don. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Chair Kerry and tēnā koutou katoa. Look, I take it as read. Perhaps just a quick update on the community hubs funding, which I think is probably quite an exciting fund, this, even though it was only 250,000 for 8 community hubs. The hubs have been largely now equipped. We've still got a few generators to provide and wire in, but other than that, they're well and truly on their way. The great thing about that is that virtually every hub that's received it, they're now using their all far more regularly than they were before, because they've got a whole lot of gear in there that they can use. And really was the point, part of the point of that as well. But on top of that, you note we've got 2 halls that are getting full solar power. And this is quite a complex project. It's up to $100,000 per hall. MB sort of turned it over to the locals to just actually get the quotes and help with the design. We think it's entirely unfair because there was panic right from the start, because how the hell would they know whether it should be going on the roof or on the ground? So Sarah Fountain has been doing the community hubs, has spoken to both of those halls and helping with them. They've got the quotes coming in, but helping them decide whether it should go on the roof or on the ground. Pretty big decision to be made, actually, because you've got to have the ground to do it. And but the interesting thing about that, just doing a quick costing, that both those halls actually make quite a decent income from putting the power back into the grid because they have a battery backup. So it is a real win for both organisations. There is still money nationally for further putting further areas into solar power. I think they'll probably be looking at more at Marai to begin with, and then maybe other community hubs. So we're certainly keeping an eye on that. Just on the future, we're just rewriting the plan now, which is done every 6 months. We're, as a team, transitioning more into a resilience role than a recovery role, except for roading, obviously. Which will be in recovery for some time. But the main areas that we're working with is around farmer support, working with Rural Support Trust. And it is now not just only Cyclone Gabriel, but as we reported, it's actually drought for some areas. And it's getting quite serious to the point that MPI had a meeting this morning with RTS and the, I think, Federated Farmers, just to look at parts of Horowhenua, Manawatu and Wairarapa, as well as Tararua, may declare in the next few weeks. So that is a focus to make sure we're on top of that. The funding we've got is still for 2 years, and that most of that funding will be going into staff salary, but mainly into support trust to ensure they keep going, because their funding stops very shortly from MPI. I think it's important. The other area which you keep an eye on is collection of data. We do know that this outcome of this cyclone alone is probably going to have an economic effect for the next 3 to 5 years in Tararua. At the moment, the data we're getting is sort of expenditure is much the same as it was for the last few years. But then you go and talk to businesses in Paiatua, a couple in Dannevirke, one in Dannevirke said, actually, no, we're getting more business from farmers. But others in Paiatua particularly say, no, we're not. We're really experiencing, we've sold no new vehicles, we're getting a lot more in for servicing, a lot of old vehicles for servicing. So the idea is to keep an eye on that. But I think there's 2 areas of data we do need to collect. One is the economic side of it. The other is the social side. What effect is it, for instance, farmers putting people off work? Fencers have already left the area because they can get plenty of fencing, but no one's got the money to pay. So we're trying to keep an eye on this because this has a real knock-on effect, not only to farming, but into the district as well. And I think we have got the data sets that we could get quite easily through what we've got already through MarketView, .lows data, Infometrics, etc. So that's probably where we're looking into the future. As you know, one of our staff, Tony, will be leaving shortly, and that her role is slowly winding down. Sarah Fountain will continue with it only because we've still got $6,000 that can be used for an event going into the future. So that's approximately where we are.
Thank you very much, Don, for that. Councillors, we've got Councillor Irina.
Chair Carey. Thanks, Don, for the updates. It's good to be kept in the loop and a little bit of winding down going on. There's just a couple of questions that sprung to mind. I'm glad you said that the solar panels could go on the ground as well, because I know some of the roofs on these halls probably aren't up to standard to take the weight. Is that right?
Probably okay, but with 20 plus panels on one roof, it's got to be a north facing roof. It'd probably strain them a little bit. However, look, we actually had an online meeting with MB last week, and we had both the people involved with both halls online, and it came up with that has been a problem. MB came back and said, look, if you've got any questions at all, we're happy to answer them, and we'll get someone out. Now, make your mind up. If those people are available, they should be coming out anyway to talk to the hall so that they can give them a full picture of what can be used. Don't leave it to those people to make a decision and then find it doesn't actually stand up. So it's a little bit messy. So that's why we've said to Sarah, look, can you put it under your wing, make sure the questions are answered, keep in touch between MB and the halls to ensure that it goes through smoothly. So the quotes have come in. We think the quotes probably don't reflect the job as such, so we're asking for another one. MB said you only need one, which I totally disagree with. Crazy, because they know that. So we've had one quote come in and we just said, really? Having put solar on our house, it's damn near 3 times the price. And I think people see a government department coming and adjust their price accordingly.
Yeah, I just know that the community board have donated money towards Herbertville for their roof. So that's why I brought that up. I also saw this one other thing about doing first aid courses. The only risk I see in putting some people through for each hub is that they do expire.
Yes, look, we're well aware of that. So the first aid course is looking at May. They're actually a farm first aid course. It's not just around cyclones, more around, four-wheel drives and things like that. And most people, well, no, it's not quite true. A lot of people should have done those first aid courses because they were available, and most of the farmers' wives have probably gone through that. Yes, they do need to be upgraded. So we'll be talking with St John as well, just to ensure that local St John keeps an eye on it and helps to upgrade them. It used to be done quite regularly. Should be done again.
Right, well, thanks very much for that. Oh, we'll just take a step back. Councillor Sharon.
Thanks, Kerry. Through you, John, I get a sense that the team is winding down. Do you have in your next 6-month plan a time when we won't be having recovery updates around this council table and the likes of, because you've got a couple of staff working in the team, because the real struggle that every organisation is having, including RST, is what does business as usual look like now?
Yeah, look, thank you, Councillor. It's very much a live discussion. And none of us want to be there just for the sake of filling up the space. That just doesn't work. But one thing we do know that the funding is there for 2 years and we don't want to waste a single cent of that, and nor do we want to give it back. So what we're looking at is what are the areas that funding can be used for to ensure that there is a proper recovery. And as I've said, this is going to be a 3 to 5 year recovery for businesses and particularly for farmers. So I guess the main area we're looking at is recovery for farmers, and it's not just around economic, it's actually welfare, and that's the biggest area that Jane and her team are working on at the moment. And the problem is their funding dries up very shortly. Just crazy, to be honest. I don't know, Tracy, just question you, when we met with Mark Mitchell, I don't get a sense that he's going to cut things off. I think if we've got a good case in some areas for further help, and it could be just 50,000 or something going towards RTS. My feeling is that we could make a really good case for that. That is what we've been talking about now, is making sure we've got data. And if there is a need for a case, make sure we've got a case ready to give to ministers. I don't know what you feel.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. And look, certainly advocated with both Minister Mitchell and with Minister Patterson around that, but actually waiting for that data, waiting for that case. So I need some of that to formulate it, to actually put into a letter to both ministers around just what we want and what we're looking for. Yeah. Certainly advocated just the impact that will support trusted farming out there in our communities, and that we into the future see this continuing as a challenge.
Thank you. Look, we've had a conversation with Colin and Grace Knock, just to ensure that we have got the right data sets to be able to use. I'm sure we have actually. Yeah.
Just to expand on some of the stuff around what you're talking about, within the roading space, there is a bit of demand for the I support that we need from Don's team as well, in regards to access to landowners in terms of resilience improvement up slope routes. So we are starting to form a few of those connections a bit stronger as well to be able to help us do our jobs properly. So yeah, it's not just about, I suppose, the rural side of things that the team deliver, but they're also providing us with key information.
Yeah, I can understand to that, Chair Kerry. I guess the sense I'm trying to understand is we set up a recovery team with all of these people in it to establish those links and support roading recovery, farming recovery, etc., etc. I appreciate the value that the RST have added to that, and I hear what you're saying, Don, but my understanding, if that funding's there, do we at council need to support the ongoing work of a recovery manager plus up to 3 staff to be able to ensure that RST carries on doing their work and the roading? I'm trying to understand, and it might be through to you, Brian, from an operational perspective. When does that team with that title no longer have to be supported by council? I'm not picky, I'm just trying to understand.
So that's pretty much exactly what has been asked from Don and the team, is to provide the next 6-month plan around what gaps need to be filled and how we fill those gaps. And we know that the RST has still got a role to play long term, so they've identified that. So as Don had said, funding will continue to provide that. From a staffing perspective, we do have considerable funding still available, so it's about how we can best utilise it, but also fill in the gaps in what Andrew just talked about. So the team are, I believe, currently drafting a plan, and that we can feed that in. I think we did mention to the Minister that we are doing this next, and we'll share that plan with him as well. So yeah, it is being drafted, exactly those questions about that. And then the next part of that would actually go to the DPMC and say, this is the fund. You know, there was quite a tight criteria around it, but we've got to really have a good case to maybe stretch that criteria potentially as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks very much, Don. If there's no more questions, the time and efforts are appreciated. Thank you. And we'll get a resolution moving in a second. Councillor Peter and Councillor Sharon, all in favour? Aye. Carry. Thank you, councillors and the team. We shall move on to capital projects. Mike, if you're all in your hands. You just, is any way you'd like to run it, Mike? You go. we can go and if you like to. We've got your schedule, we'll go sheet by sheet. Let's see how the councillors will. Let's do that. And then we can ask questions backwards if you like, or sheet by sheet. Okay, Northwood wastewater treatment plant upgrade. Sorry, water treatment plant. Water treatment plant. Councillor Peter?
Chair Kerry, just before we get on to the sheets, item 6 on page 30.
Yep, we're on to you, Peter. Good there.
I wonder whether Mark has got an update on discussions with NZTA and WSP on the Lindale Walkway, given the revocation issue that we were talking about earlier on.
Yes.
There's a bit of a connection there, possibly.
Kerry, just
I just caught them again there in regards to pushing them along in regards to the designs that are coming back. And I received an email back from WSP yesterday in regards to the design should be with us within basically 2 weeks. So once we've got those designs through, they'll go through to Aaron will go through to the Alliance, and then they'll look at working from there. So within 2 weeks, we should have the actual drawing as well, plans for we will.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
I think he's referring to the Te Aho Turanga Alliance, not the Terror Alliance. So, yeah. It's not real clear. The good thing is that they're taking a lead on that on our behalf, which is great.
It's Peter, you just did see a note I had, Peter, you reminded me before we got to the sheet. So there's just a comment about Laws Road investigations proving to be a bit dismal, so which was looking okay for a start. So perhaps yourself or Dave might have a update. We looked a bit promising for a bit, Dave. Is that looking not so good?
Kerry, yeah, the other day your comment was correct. Did look a bit dismal, but we've had another meeting with seismic lady, Peter, myself, and Mike have been involved, and Bayless Brothers. So at the moment, we're looking at getting a price back. Oh, Roger was involved too, sorry. Just waiting to get a price back for them to put a 300 mil bore and line it down to quite depth, the water that's there, so that we can then get a true reading of what flow is exactly there through the right size pipe and the pumping regime that we need to do. So that was only less than a week ago. So whether that would then involve 2 bores 200 or 300 metres apart, feeding to one pipe. So at the present time, we're just getting a price to put it down to see how much money Roger's got in his little pot that we can actually keep moving forward, and the feasibility of it all continuing on. So we haven't abandoned it. It was just one of those things that it didn't really show up that well, but we've been reassured by Bayless after a good discussion, or a couple of good discussions actually, that because of the size pipe we put in and the flow was XYZ, by putting a bigger pipe down. So we'd still have to go through before we struck gold again. It would still be putting it down, getting the flow testing done, the recharge in the stream, and also Peter and I are going to touch base with Horizons over. We're still, I think we're both a bit conscious of the fact of if you move down to Laws Road, where there's more water in the river and low flows compared to the top Tamaki, we still have to distinguish whether
we will get more take at that point. So we still have to have some gains. We can't just be putting a bore in to go in the same spot, or we may only get, for argument's sake, say we only got 40 to 50 litres a second. It's probably worth pursuing at that stage, be able to get that water out. But we really want some indication from them whether we can get another 10 litres a second at low flow time, because we're moving between the two positions and we've only got the total flow. So yeah, a little bit we're not jumping in and spending Roger's money straight away. We're just trying to work our way through where we take the next step. That makes sense?
Councillor Steve?
Yeah, through you, Kerry. Is it the same aquifer or no?
It's not. Can't identify, well, you can't, I would say it's out of the river. There's no doubt about it. With that, we're close to the river. So it will depend on how that affects the stream. So when we go and meet with Horizon, we'll get the hydrologists there and their team, so we can actually make sure that we've got everybody in the same room talking about the same thing to get the right answers at the end of it. But I would say it definitely would be out of the river, but whether that makes any difference to the river. So when we do the testing program, we go through and put the bore in and do this testing, we will know how much that makes a difference on the actual flow in the stream at that time. So yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons. Pete's probably got a bit more idea of what we're talking about, but yeah, it's identifying and making sure that we're ticking all those boxes, but we're actually benefiting from what we're going to do, not go back, not backwards, but not have enough.
You can add something to that, Peter?
One other piece of good news is that the chemical analysis of the water is good in terms of the nitrates and the other measures. So the quality of the water in the test that we did is fine, well below any levels that would give us concern. So that was one of the concerns, because we are downstream from a dairy farm and nitrates can move their way into the groundwater. We are very close to the river though. It must be only 15 metres away from the actual river. So that's how we know it's the river. In terms of the depth, it's only at 12 metres, so it's quite shallow. So how much water gets and recharges into that location is one of the key factors. What they saw in the second test bore, where we actually had a pump, that it was delivering and recharging really well, but they were only drawing at 5.5 litres per second, which sounded like it was the constraint of the pump rather than what it could deliver at. That's why the initial was only 5.5. That's not nearly enough for us to justify a large capital investment to pipe it into the system. But it does mean that there might be multiple locations. All the seismic tests indicated consistently water along that area, along the riverbank, essentially. So all we would achieve with shallow bores is some level of natural rock filtration, taking away some of the turbidity. So that's the advantage of the bore. We know that we could put a weir in and do an intake gallery. That's certain in terms of being able to take water from that river at that point. That's how we usually do it. It's just that we won't get the gain of removing the turbidity. So that's the advantage. The fact that it's a number of rivers are joining there and not at the Upper Tamaki site means that it may never get to low flows at that location. In other words, we will never have to drop to 54 litres per second, which is insufficient for the town. That's what we're hoping for. So unless it's a drought, unless it's a really bad drought, in which case it might drop. But that area, the flow is so much better to the Upper Tamaki that we currently take.
Fingers crossed to keep moving forward.
Promising, more promising than we thought a month ago.
Thanks, Peter and Dave. Much appreciated. All right, Mike, back to you. Skip past, so we'll get on to North's water treatment plant. Questions? Anything there, Mike, you want to ask?
Signed off, the agreement's been signed and we're moving into delivery with it.
Then water supply fluoridation, we'll skip over that very quickly.
We've already done
IAF project.
Only thing to note on that one is just that's our first iteration of using our software to start generating these reports. So we'll refine it as we carry on, but.
Right. SCADA upgrade. All good. Benefit wastewater treatment plant. Okay. Fire to wastewater treatment plant. Or just a drop mic if you need to, I'll click through to. There, okay, emergency works for Kaiatai, we've had an update from Andrew. Karahi to Hono. Pretty good there, aren't we?
It's just
I've got some progress maps and some good photography there, thanks.
Can I just, through you?
Yes, certainly. While I'm talking to myself, Sharon.
I don't want to interrupt you if you're up to a key point in your discussion with yourself. I guess it's either through to Mike or to Andrew, but how's the community support around the progress that is being made on the road? Why is he laughing? Are they still being nice to you out there or not?
I haven't had any negative feedback, put it that way.
Okay.
I've been very busy, so I haven't actually the people I do talk to say very good words. On the home straight.
Yeah, Tracy.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Just on the Pahiatua wastewater treatment plant, the section in red is that the project won't be delivered in time to meet consent compliance conditions. What is the risk around with Horizons Regional Council with any penalties that might come there?
Me and Tracy, Chair, we don't know yet. We're meeting with Horizons on Friday. We had met to meet with them last Friday, but they weren't available. It's not just this consent, it's a number of consents. So we need to understand Horizons' position, what approach they're going to take, and then how we can work together to move through these consents. But there's a multitude of them. So we've made it clear to them we can't do it all at once. So we need to prioritise and then work through them.
Thanks, Roger. So I just follow on from there, Tracy's. Oh, sorry, Sharon. Oh, just, Roger, so that includes the outstanding water treatment plant consent?
Yeah, so that'll be Ekirahuna because we're well outside the timeframes that were specified in the consent. It'll be Pahiatua, it's Pongaroa wastewater treatment. It'll probably be Norsewood wastewater treatment as well. So the list goes on. Yeah.
As part of our discussions over the last week, I think it's important we sort of need to start prioritising these and put them on a hit list, don't we, really? You know, that obviously Horizons are starting to rattle their sabres a little bit now, aren't they? And we need to get a plan, don't we, for all these. So, yeah. Yeah, Tracy?
Thanks, Chair Kerry. I guess this is just to take note of also it was part of the discussion with John Campbell. You know,
You apply for these consents, you're in the environment board, you've got the plans, but until you get the consent, you can't start with the land purchase, you can't start planning anything, but the clock's ticking and it just doesn't work. That was one of the conversations I had. It's just understanding where the regional council fits on that. Not a perfect process.
Thanks, Roger. Oh, sorry, Roger.
Can I just add that one other thing? Yes, we need to set those priorities, but we also need to engage with iwi. So we're meeting with iwi on Friday. Well, we're meeting with Rangatane on Friday because they're a critical part of the solution as well. So iwi, Horizons and ourselves and stakeholders, so and the community, for example, Pongaroa, where, you know, as we go through each of the different plants.
Thanks very much, Roger. I think that was the end of it, wasn't it? Right, councillors, and anything? Resolution first. We're going to second it for the report. Councillor Steve and Tracy, all in favour? Thank you. Carried. Councillors, any final matters you'd like to bring up regarding today's? Right, fantastic. We'll declare this meeting closed. Thanks everybody for their efforts and staff. Great.